So we are on recording. And we are on live on Facebook. Yay. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. This is Jessica with NAMI Greater Houston, and this is our Tuesday Talks, where every Tuesday we get together and have conversations about a variety of topics that impact mental health. As most of you know, today is Election Day, so we have a special Election Day edition of Tuesday Talks, where we have an awesome panel together to give you guys different perspectives. We have a couple of people in the field. We even have someone on the ballot today. So I will let this awesome group introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into it. Please feel free to join the conversation. I'll be monitoring the chat for questions and comments, and let's do this. So again, thank you guys to my panel for joining us. We've got, and please forgive me if I say your names wrong. I've got Tawana Walter-Cadien. We've got Judge Joe Stevens, Markia Bordeaux, Rain Eatmon. So let's start with Rain. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hello, my name is Rain Eatmon. I am currently working as an assistant to Ms. Tarsha Jackson. I'm also working with the Urban Community Network. I am also a community activist, more heavily involved with the Acres Homes community, but I do predominantly serve a lot more historically Black communities, as well as Hispanic communities as well. And I recently became more activated as I began to do more work for police accountability in the city of Houston, as well as just becoming more activated in the Houston area Urban League's Young Professional Group. And I think that is a good summation of everything that I bring to the table.
Awesome. Judge Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Fantastic. My name is Judge Joe Stevens, live from the front seat of my car today. I'm out here trying to help with some GOTV efforts. I'm actually on the ballot today. I currently serve as Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3, Place 1. That's out in East Houston. For you guys that don't come out past downtown, it's a little about 12 miles east of downtown. I've served in this capacity for the last 4 years. Prior to this, I served as 9 years as a school board trustee in Galena Park ISD. And then many moons before that, I played for the Houston Rockets back in the mid-90s. But I've been in public service now for probably over, I think, 14 years, kind of serving the constituents of East Houston. I've always had an affinity for kids. And I currently work with mental health dockets is one of the jobs I deal with now. As a Justice of the Peace. So these concerns are very near and dear to my heart. I'm in the trenches, pretty much every other month at the mental health hospital down off McGregor, dealing on the front lines with mental health. So I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Tawana, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I am Tawana Walter-Cadien, registered nurse, public administrator, advocate, and former candidate for the United States Congress for the 10th Congressional District of Texas. Mental health is something, even as a candidate, that I focus on because I know that more legislation, as well as resources and as well as understanding needs to be in place as far as mental illness is concerned. As a director of nonprofits, I lead a nonprofit, but am heavily involved with other nonprofit organizations, including my daughter's organization. And we do a lot with those who are living in homeless shelters. So just the impact of homelessness and so many other things that surround mental illness and the importance of supporting programs for mental health is why I do what I do. So I'm excited to be a part of this panel with all of these wonderful people. So we look forward to a great conversation on this election day. If you're not voted, please get out to vote.
Love it. I love it. Wow. You guys, I am so excited. The more I learn about you guys, the more excited I am to have you. Marquita, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hey everybody. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. And I'm excited to share this space with everyone. But I have a background in social work and community engagement. I'm also an activist slash organizer and professional table shaker. So with Houston Area Urban League Young Professionals, NAACP, ACLU, and a few other organizations. And I see Tawana has the Howard Bison background, so I have to shout out Prairie View really quick. But
That's my college, by the way. I graduated from Prairie View. This is my daughter's office.
I knew it. I was like, there's something about her. I like her. And I'm in my last semester of law school. So in about 40 days, I will be, I'll have my JD. And then hopefully in about 4 months, I will be Esquire, officially an attorney. So.
Excellent. Congrats. Y'all are making moves. So proud of you all. Quentin, talk to us.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to be here and again, like Markia said, share this space with so many wonderful people. So my name is Quentin R. Jiles. I'm a licensed master social worker. I used to be a social work consultant traveling the country, a lot of times working in the mental health space, a lot of states like California working with their 5150 population. So people on suicide and homicide ideation watch. So I've done a lot of that work. I have since transitioned because I love politics and we know today is election day. So I want to ditto, make sure you go and vote. I have transitioned my work and I really focus on educating the public. So I am now a political commentator, which today is going to be such a crazy time because I'll be on KHOU later tonight and NBCLX, which is their new station for millennial and Gen Z people to get them activated in the political spectrum as well. I do some work here in the Houston Area Urban League. So shout out to my other YPers that are on the call. We in this thing deep and we really focus on civic advocacy and community advocacy to get our people and impoverished people to a better state of play. So I'm super excited to see where this conversation is going to take us.
Same. Okay, wow. Let's jump right into it. Rain and Judge Joe, I know you guys are both in the field right now. So tell us what you guys are seeing. Tell us what you're expecting, what you're hoping for.
So a lot of what I'm currently seeing is really revolving around that anticipation. I believe everybody is really working off of nerves. If an event planner is watching, you already know these jitters of just building up and trudging up the mountain just to get to this point. And now all of a sudden you're here, you want to collapse. And so as I was passing out information to our poll workers today, I started seeing people, I know at the Acres Home Multi-Service Center at 6:30 in the morning. I know there were no severe lines in terms of people stretched out the back and things of that nature, but there were at least a few excited individuals to say, okay, let me just go ahead and get ready, get going. I know there was supposed to be a slight performance at the Multi-Service Center. I believe there was a mariachi band out there as part of a Get Out to Vote initiative. I believe they left closer to about 10. And then for the most part, it's been really intentional. I can definitely say that. It's been really intentional. Let me go in, let me get my vote, and then let me leave, because as we are all aware, we all have lives to live once this day is over. So I think today is more intentionality and saying, let's just go ahead and get this done. Let's get in, get out. How do they say it in that song? We don't want no problems, big fella, something like that. They're just headset. So that's kind of what I've been seeing as I've been going back and forth.
Did she say a mariachi band in Acres Homes?
She sure
Yes, did. I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
I can dig it.
Yes, I did.
So I'm working the polls here in East Houston. I've been everywhere from Homestead Road over to the Wallaceville Library. and it's just been steady, not a big rush, but just kind of a steady flow, which leads me to believe that most people that are going to vote probably already have, or we're probably going to have these rushes. So I'm assuming probably around 5 when people get off of work, we may have another big push. But to speak to voting and the mental health space, I deal with it from the capacity of when people get committed to the hospital, right, for irrational behavior, family members called in because they threatened to kill themselves. Whenever they want to get out, they have, I think, 72 hours they can be heard by a judge in order to get out. So typically when I see them, they're now medicated, they're normal, and they're judged, look, I'm fine, I want to go home. Very rarely do I let them out. But to me, the importance of voting and participating in this process is because the empathy that a politician that understands and has a heart for mental health issue, you're going to consequently get the funding for those kinds of issues. Very rarely do I let somebody out, because my personal philosophy is you were committed by medical professionals, right? And as a judge, I don't feel like I have the knowledge to evaluate you by sight and say you're well enough to leave this hospital when I read this paper and it says you just tried to kill somebody with a knife less than 48 hours ago. But there are times that certain patients come in, right? And their family will be there in the audience as we're having this hearing. And they also have a doctor from Vinegar. And they let me as the judge know that, judge, when they leave your care, they're going to get into our car and we're taking them right over to Vinegar. Well, everybody can't afford Vinegar, right? Most people can't afford Vinegar. So we've got to have people, politicians in office that care about these issues, that are going to do what's necessary to see to it that if you can't go to Vinegar, you get equal, or at the very least, adequate care. Now, the people down in Harris County, I think they do a fantastic job, but I can tell you right offhand, we need more training. We need a lot more training. We need more training for judges, right? I didn't come into this profession knowing anything about mental health issues. I didn't. And I've had to basically self-educate myself, go to as many online courses as I could to kind of catch myself up to speed for what the kind of cases that I would be dealing with. So I think it's important that we all participate in this process, as we get as many people as we can to get out to the polls, so that the needs and the concerns of our community, especially our mental health community, is met. And so, one, people that look like us on this call, right, can get the necessary services, because we know when it comes to health and dealing with hospitals and medical professionals, people of color aren't usually at the front of the line. It's a known fact that we get worse service when we go to the hospital. So we have to elect people that have our agenda at heart, that have our plight at heart, to make sure to it that when we do have these issues, because mental health is a very, very serious issue, and it takes funding. It takes funding. A lot of times we're cast away to the legal system when we really have a health problem. So I'm glad to be here today to speak to, and I'm glad to be out here on the front lines trying to help people get elected that are going to see to it that these concerns will be met when we're faced with them. So thank you.
You have so many excellent points. We actually had Sheriff Ed Gonzalez on last week, and he spoke to the similar idea that we need more community involvement, more community programs in place, because he's faced with it from, the front lines, right? So he's out in the streets having to combat these mental health concerns, and people call in as if it's a crime, right? And he's having to fill up the jails with people who are not necessarily criminals, but people who are sick and need that type of mental health support. So I'm so grateful to have you be able to speak from the judicial perspective on the mental health concerns. Also, quick note, NAMI National has set up a website, voteformentalhealth.org. That's vote, VOTE, the number 4, mentalhealth.org. And it will give you some awesome perspectives on on some of the mental health legislation that's out right now, and also the electives perspectives on those issues. So go check it out. See if you have not voted and you want a little bit more information about what the candidates' perspectives are, go to voteformentalhealth.org and you can definitely get some more information. Also regarding resources, NAMI Greater Houston is a resource to the community. We have a warm line that can assist if you are in some of the positions that Judge Joe mentioned, where you either need legal support or you need housing support, or you just kind of don't know where to go. You can't afford a miniger, so you don't know where to go. So definitely check out NAMI's website as well as the Vote for Mental Health website for more information about candidates and legislation.
I totally forgot I'm supposed to take lunch to one of my crews that are at Northeast. I need to dip out. But what I was going to say too is the consequences for us sometimes are death, right? When we have mental health issues. I saw the young man the other night with the knife in his hand, running towards the police officers. We need resources and funding to help these officers get more training, to elect people like Ed Gonzalez that are going to work to that end, because sometimes when we have mental health issues, we don't get to go home. We get killed on the street because people are afraid of us more so than they would be somebody else with the same issue. So thank you guys for having me. And
thanks for joining us,
yep,
Joe.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Wow, that was awesome. So, Tawana, tell me a little bit more about how you feel today's elections will impact the issues that you've worked with your nonprofits. I know you mentioned homelessness, and that's a big one that we see at NAMI a lot. Housing is probably the #1 request that we get calls for as far as resources.
Well, I will say from a homeless perspective, someone may have gone into homelessness without a mental illness. However, depending upon the length of time they are in the situation, whether they are on the street or if they're living house to house or even in a shelter, those types of stressors can lead to mental illness. That is not to say that someone living in a secured mansion without a worry in the world as far as finances are concerned cannot have that same mental illness. I think in addition to training, right, in addition to community involvement and electing the right officials, that we as a citizen body need to really understand what constitutes mental illness. And anxiety is one of the main constitutions of mental illness.
Yes.
I think all of us on the phone right now is experiencing some on the computer right now is experiencing some level of anxiety, right? It has in society, whether you agree with the civil unrest or not, one side or another, there is anxiety that is like the icing on all of our cake right now. It's ice with anxiety. So with the organizations that I work with, I'm president of 12 Days of Christmas Houston. And my daughters founded their nonprofit organization, Kids Care. With 12 Days of Christmas Houston, the families that we assist, the majority of them are in some type of financial need. Sometimes it is an acute crisis, or sometimes it may be a situation that has been more long-term. You may have a grandparent that's caring for grandchildren. Some of the families that we assist are in homeless shelters. Some of the families, especially since this pandemic season has begun, are facing homelessness. So imagine the level of anxiety, the level of depression. We have, like I said, I'm in my daughter's office, right? Everybody is not able to say, oh, my daughter has an office to study in. What happened as a result of the pandemic is children were home and some of them were in very, very small spaces all day long. So let's think about what happened with the family who's accustomed to their children eating breakfast and lunch at school, and now they're home all day. not only did the food bill go up, but so did the light bill and the water bill. And now some of those children did not have a computer at home to learn virtually. So not only are the adults feeling this pressure or this anxiety, so are the children. Am I going to fail? Will I make it to the next grade? I don't understand how to use this new system that the school has installed. So when you have all of those fears in a home, imagine what's happening when you're homeless. I implore everyone that can even hear this message to really consider making the homeless population a part of your, if you love philanthropy or you are engaged in charitable behaviors, consider remembering the homeless population. Consider reaching out to organizations, even including 12 Days of Christmas, that may have that's focus is on families who are impoverished, to see how you can help and how you can assist them. What may not be a big deal to us is a really big deal to children who are poor. So with our organization, we get a sheet each year to select new families. Our first contact with them is in December, and there's often a wish list. Imagine getting a wish list from a child, and the only thing they want is a backpack, or the only thing they want is a coat. So that kind of tells you the types of stressors that the children too are engaged with. I will say this: the children get it. Those even your age, I believe, get it. You all look like you might be late 20s or so, right? You all get it. But those who are in place making the laws and pressing legislation have not just gotten it, because some of us, even my generation and definitely above my generation and before then, it was kind of taboo to talk aloud if you were a male, especially. If you are a woman who's supposed to handle everything, it was kind of taboo to say, I'm feeling depressed, or I don't know what's going on with me. I can't sleep.
Exactly.
I feel like I need to run, right? So you all get it. And that's why we need younger people. Quentin, I was glad to hear you say you're politically involved. We need some of you who get it to get more engaged when it's safe to do so, to start knocking on the doors of your state representative to say, we need you all to sit and listen to us, because mental illness is real and we're not afraid to talk about it. When people accept what is really happening, then they will put not only the mouth towards it, but they'll put the money towards it. They will make children, teenagers. It hurts my heart when I hear of teens killing themselves and preteens killing themselves because they felt they didn't have anywhere else to go. So because you all get it and you are eligible, when there's an opportunity for you to represent, you don't need politicians, you need representatives, right? When you have the opportunity to represent, I want you to go for it. Because you get it, you will put legislation in place that would actually support the need. If we don't handle mental illness appropriately right now, 10 years from now, we're going to have some adults that are non-functional, and we're all going to feel the side effect from it. So get involved. Don't forget about the homeless population. Don't forget about those who are impoverished right now, because they're feeling it pretty bad right now.
You said a whole word, okay? And I think a lot of our viewers, a lot of our mental health community can relate to what you've said. Unfortunately, homelessness and mental health, like you mentioned, is very, very closely related in some instances. And also homelessness and youth and mental health. 1 in 6 children between the ages of 10 and 17 live with some sort of mental health condition. 1 in 6, and 1 in 5 adults. So it's real. And, you know, you didn't use a word, but you spoke on the stigma that has been associated with mental health issues or mental illness for so long. And I love that, you know, with the younger generations, that stigma is being chipped at slowly but surely. But as you mentioned, the people who are making the laws, the people who control the funding, they don't quite get it yet. They don't understand that, hey, this is not only is this real, but we need to talk about it and we need to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So yes, girl, all of what you said. Markia and Quentin, you guys both mentioned that you know, you're big on political commentary. So I mean, tell us what you think. How have you seen? What have you seen? What have you heard? How is this election going to affect what happens tomorrow?
I'll jump in. So I think, as for me, I want to touch on how voting is central and how it intersects with our criminal justice system and our judiciary, especially on a state and local level. So right now, and this is nonpartisan, but we have several judges who are on the ballot for the Court of Criminal Appeals. And three of these judges who are up for re-election are notorious for being pro-prosecutor, pro-police, and pro-execution. So to give you kind of like a background, we know that about 1 in 3 adults and about 3 in 4 juveniles within the criminal justice system have some type of diagnosable mental illness. And that directly relates to our community, the Black and Brown community, because we know we're over-policed, but we also are overrepresented in the prison system. And so for our Court of Criminal Appeals, for those that don't know, it's if you are, so in Texas, there's the Texas Supreme Court, and then there's the Court of Criminal Appeals. So they're both on the same level. And a lot of people think, oh, the Supreme Court is like the big court, it's the last resort, but they're actually at the same level. And the criminal appeals hears the criminal cases, Supreme Court hears the civil cases. And so if you have an individual with a mental illness who's been incarcerated, they've been convicted, and let's say they're on death row, and they're appealing to basically have one more chance at life and not really be put to death. And so they would appeal to the Court of Criminal Appeals. So I want to turn everyone's attention to, and if you can just Google, Lydell Grant is a man who was wrongfully convicted back in, I think, 2012 for murder. And DNA evidence came out that he was not the person who committed the crime. He filed a motion for a writ of habeas, which is basically you're appealing to the court to just review your case. So it was determined that there was another person who committed this crime, DNA evidence, and, you know, pointed to this person confessed. And the district judge sustained that motion. The district attorney here in Houston came out and said they made a mistake. Chief Art Acevedo came out and said they made a mistake, and this went all the way to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And how this relates to mental health is because this individual not only had a diagnosable mental illness, but his IQ level was lower than what the legal standard would be for you to even be subjected to execution. And so this case has not been sustained by the Court of Criminal Appeals. Basically, they're saying that, you know, they want more information. They want the court to go and track down these eyewitnesses from this case. And long story short, I know I'm rambling, but basically what this means is not only did this man have a mental illness and a low IQ, but it goes back to Tawana's point about people not getting it. They're not understanding the intersectionality between mental illnesses and the criminal justice system. And, you know, as a judge who sits on the highest criminal court in the state of Texas, you have a responsibility to weigh all of those factors and really to have empathy when it comes to people who are facing, you know, murder charges and execution, you know. And so I know we're nonpartisan, but I think people should really take that into consideration when you're voting, because you're voting for people who they don't look like us, or they may not have a mental illness, or they just don't understand and they don't get it. And this person, Lydell Grant, has been declared innocent. DNA evidence has come out exonerating him, but they're failing to declare his actual innocence in terms of his case. And it's really important. So 3 of those judges are on the ballot, and I'm going to call them out, but just Google the Court of Criminal Appeals and you'll see who's on the ballot today. And one more point before I pass it to Quentin. Sharon Keller, who is the chief of the Court of Criminal Appeals, this was in I think 2007, there was a man up for execution, and his attorneys were filing a last minute appeal to the Court of Criminal Appeals just to get more time to argue their case to get this man off of death row. So they were having technical difficulties, and they appealed to the court saying, hey, can we get 30 more minutes? We're having technical difficulties, and we're trying to file this motion. And do you guys know what Judge Keller said to these attorneys? She said, we close at 5 o'clock. She said, we close at 5 o'clock. She would not allow them to file this motion. And 3 hours later, this man, his name is Michael Richard. He was executed on September 25th. 3 hours later. So this is giving you an idea of, how important voting is when it comes to our state and local elections. So 3 of these judges are on the ballot, and Sharon Keller is up for re-election in 2 years. So
quick question regarding the gentleman, Mr. Grant. Are there petitions out? What is it that people can do to support this man who has been declared innocent? With mental illness and a low IQ, what is it that the general population can do to voice our desire for justice for him?
Absolutely. I don't have information on that, but I certainly can take on that responsibility and get with Jessica to put that information out there. But there's been media coverage about it. There has been uproar about it. And it's unprecedented, because you have the district attorney and the chief of police come out and saying, we've made a mistake. This man did not do it. There's DNA evidence to prove his innocence. And it's so important, because not only are we waiting on the Court of Criminal Appeals to determine him innocent, but right now he has a murder charge on his record. He can't get a job. He can't get resources. He can't go to school and get federal loans. He can't do all of that. And also, as it relates to exoneration, he is eligible for financial compensation for the 12 years that he has spent in prison. And it's up to the Court of Criminal Appeals to declare him actually innocent, to have his record removed, and to also make him eligible for compensation, which he rightfully deserves. So, Rain.
I do hate to do this, because this conversation is very, very thick, and I want to make sure that we really drive the point home. Unfortunately, I do have to go back into the field, but I just kind of want to echo what Ms. Tawana was saying earlier. It is on us to really strive to make ourselves knowledgeable and vote in the people who represent us. I mean, we are in, and this is my personal opinion based on observation and experiences that I've seen in my activeness in working with the community. We are a generation that is so well equipped with knowledge and information that we have the ability to speak truth to power to names that would normally be hidden away for years. I hate to say it, but unfortunately the situation with Mr. Grant has probably happened 50 times over, generations back, and yet we're still facing that same level of discrimination. But the key that we have to face today as a society is that now we are not shrouded in ignorance. We don't have to wait as long to get hold of information. We don't have to wait as long to try to figure out how to break down these systems, because the average millennial is far more knowledgeable about what goes on the political level than what we are led to believe. Because if you were to look at the MSNBCs and the Fox Newses and things of that nature, they would always paint us, and they still paint us to this day, in a picture of apathy, not really caring, making sure that we aren't really seen as a viable force. And yet we see people like AOC, like Miss Cori Bush, those people who have bring it back to the local level. Lena Hidalgo, who's the youngest county judge to ever walk this earth and is doing an amazing job at it. But that is because she has positioned herself to utilize the information and the resource and access that is around her to engage in the system as it stands. And just as what Ms. Tawana was speaking to earlier, I really want to drive this point home. we are the generation. I had the pleasure of working for a small stint with Restoring Justice, which is a 501c3 that actually provides pretrial legal representation to those who aren't able to afford it, along with a myriad of other resources. I definitely encourage everybody here to look them up. But essentially, one of the things that I was able to speak to their youth sect of Restoring Justice, which is Youth for Justice, I essentially gave them this, I guess you would call it an allegory, in that the millennial generation is the generation that is equipped to tear the system down as it stands, but it is Gen Z and the generations afterwards that are able to build those systems that we need to have a viable community, to have a viable level of representation, to where we don't have to look at the lesser of two evils and have anxiety on both sides because we are not satisfied with who is representing us moving forward. We don't have to put up with what is being presented to us because we are equipped to make the narrative ourselves. That's the beautiful part about this. Our forefathers and our grandfathers and our ancestors worked diligently to where we don't have to fight as hard to make the world that we see, that we want to see, because we have been given access to information. We have been given the right to vote. We have been given the opportunity to stand up and make our voices heard. We have been given technologies that allow our voices to be echoed across seas that we may never step foot in, but somebody actually hears us because of what we have access to. And in that, I don't want to sound alarmist. I don't want to sound alarmist, so I'm gonna come off the throttle a little bit and just say, in that same vein of making sure that we're doing everything in our ability to make the world that we want to see, make sure that you do that on a micro scale too. Everything is a butterfly effect from this point forward, because everything that we do with intentionality has an effect that we will see for decades on. Trump made his mark with solidifying Amy Coney Barrett. Trump made his mark by filling in all of those seats. Now we get to make our mark moving forward. And the only way we can do that is by guarding ourselves with information, but also guarding our health. And I am so grateful that I grew up in a generation where I get to help break the stigma of mental health illness, especially in our own culture, but I'm not gonna go that way. I'm just gonna say that it is a privilege to be amongst people who are brave and bold enough to kind of speak truth to the fact that we need to guard ourselves, not just physically, but mentally as well. And so for everybody who is going to the polls, everybody who is going to vote, continue to stay. I know Hall YP, I actually got the message during this chat that they are looking for polling locations that may need water and snacks because the lines may be longer than normal. There are people fighting to ensure that this vote goes through and the democratic process goes unscathed. But ensure to yourself, make this promise to yourself that regardless of what happens today, that you will continue to do right by yourself and that you guard yourself. Don't make it a point where you're thirsting after doomsday scrolling. And I had to stop myself from that yesterday. There is no doomsday scrolling today. You who are going out to vote, you're doing your democratic and your citizen duty by going to vote and staying engaged in the process. And you should be able to rest in peace knowing that you did what you needed to do. And you actually contributed to the system that was made to elevate your voice. And although you may not see it immediately, continue to stay engaged. There are several primaries, there are several elections, specifically in the city of Houston, that are going to happen after this day. And so don't allow this moment to defeat you, but don't allow it to overtake you. Your power is in the ability that you are still here, that you are still valued, and you are still in a society where you are able to use your voice. Even if it's a little bit of a fight, you still have the ability to use your voice and use it to be represented in the way that you see fit. And I know that whole little tangent went to Egypt and back, but I thank you all so much for allowing me to speak to that. And I pray that everybody literally has a good mental health day today. It will, tomorrow will be Wednesday. We will all have jobs. We will all have life. we will all move forward, and we will all have the power and authority necessary to make the life we want to see, even if we don't see it today. So thank you so much for having me, and I must run to the next field.
Thanks so much, Rain.
Yeah, so she said it. So
Yeah.
as it relates
Yeah.
to the local level, that's where we're at. So I'll pass it on to Quentin.
I don't know. I don't know what else to say after Rain did that. I mean, sis dropped the mic, didn't she? I guess if anything, the one thing that I really want to pick up on what she was saying, really what everyone was saying, is that, our power is in our vote. And I believe to your original question, which was, what are we seeing? I think that, millennials and Gen Zers are very much engaged and very much aware of things at play. So I do a lot of work on TikTok, and I know people might not take TikTok seriously, but Gen Zers are on TikTok.
Yes,
They're on TikTok. And I do a lot of work over there, and we talk politics, and these people know what is going on. These people have thoughts, opinions, and views, and are advocating for them. I joined a coalition of TikTokers, and we did something called Talk the Vote, where between all of us, we had 2 million followers between all the creatives that came together. And we got people registered to vote, which was, it was great. It was a massive turnout. It was dope. People were excited, but we met people where they are. And so I think that is the beauty in this generation. And that's what's incumbent upon us, to kind of keep pushing that forward. And I think Tawana, am I saying that correctly?
correct. Yeah.
Tawana, you said it, like, our next generation of political leaders are these young people. Well, hold on, wait, I'm gonna include myself in that, even though I'm 31. I'm gonna put myself in young too. So it is these young people, and these people, we do see the value of understanding what mental health is and how it affects us. And really, there is a lot more empathy in this millennial Gen Z generation. I don't know who's coming after Gen Z, what we're naming them, but I would believe that they would have that as well, because that's the wave, that is the movement that we're going into, like understanding our feelings, understanding what's happening, and understanding, sometimes I may need to tap out. Mm-hmm. So I think we're in a good spot. I think what I've seen, I'm very encouraged by the level of activity. I'm very encouraged by the level of voting with various states breaking records. I'm very encouraged with this new talk on a political side that mental health is important, because, we can't have lockdowns in COVID-19. So we'll be holding them to that should they retain power. So I am encouraged that we have these different avenues to where we could actually do some real work in regards to mental health and just our sustainability as a people.
I want to say something about this Gen Y.
Oh, they're Gen Y. Okay, Gen Y.
I'm sorry, Gen Z, not Gen Y.
Oh, okay, because I'm like, wait, are we Gen Y or wait?
Right? No, yeah. What you just said pertaining to TikTok, because of course I did not even know about TikTok except through my 2 little Gen Zers. Okay. You are so correct, Quentin, when you say they are. I also think Rain mentioned they're more engaged than people think. They are. Yeah. So my oldest daughter, whose office I'm in, she's a senior in high school. And 2 years ago, I believe, if it wasn't 2 years ago, it was 3 years ago, they took the standardized STAR test here in Texas. And when I picked her up from school, I said, Kelsey, what was your essay about? It was the writing portion of the STAR test. And she said, oh, they ask, how do you think social media has influenced today's generation? I said, okay, what'd you put? And she says, well, I said, Mark Zuckerberg is speaking before Congress today about blah, 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 blah. And I just went, right? Because she was correct. She that engaged. I literally have had to make her take a fast, because every app on her phone was some type of world news, local news, news for our country. she is that engaged. She could be on this particular call right now and telling you everything that's happening around the world. But
Mhm.
she also is the one who is very much in touch with her mental health. She's very much so very verbal in saying, I felt anxiety. So much to the point, this summer, July, we, along with some other female authors, released a global women's devotional. She had 13 different topics to choose from, but she chose the topic about mental health. And she actually wrote in her portion about the fact that she was feeling a certain way in middle school and she thought it was normal. But then she realized this is not normal. This is some anxiety that I'm dealing with, and discussing this with her friends. I'm telling you, I am very much so excited and impressed and very hopeful for your age group as well as her age group, because I promise you all can do it. If we can support you in whatever leadership position you're running for, because I know that you get it, I will support you, because we need people to be policymakers and those to fight for legislation that's actually truly going to not only support mental health, but to understand it. When you understand something, you're not gonna just be able to say, oh, we put out a little flyer. You know how they do the red ribbon week for drugs. And so one day you wear the glasses, one day you sock it out. It's beyond that. We need people like you all and my girls' generation who will actually put some money and action behind it. So thank you. I'm very proud of you all, really.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I completely agree. I think that all of us need to be more engaged, more aware, more educated about what mental health is and about the steps that it's going to take to make those changes, right? And this next generation, they're on top of it. And I think, unfortunately, it's come out of necessity, right? We're at a place where we can't ignore it anymore. One thing that they say at NAMI is like stage 4 is too late for mental health as well. When mental health is health. So when you go to the doctor for your annual checkup, you need to do the same thing for your mental health. Where are you? How are you feeling today? What level of anxiety are you dealing with, especially in this COVID environment? So it's definitely important to be educated, to be aware, to be engaged. Judge Joe mentioned that he had to teach himself about what mental health is, how it affects people, in order to properly do his job as a mental health legal professional. So I think that says a lot about where we are in our culture regarding mental health and the crossover that we're seeing, kind of like you mentioned, Quentin, the crossover that we're seeing with the legislature, right? It's not something we can keep tucked in the corner anymore. It's not something that we can keep separate. So it's really important that we start using words like anxiety and depression, suicidal. It's okay to talk about these things, because if we don't talk about it, we're never going to fix it, right? If we can't address it and identify it and call it what it is, how are we going to make those changes? So I am loving everything that you guys had to say. One thing I did want to say is Rain talked a lot about selecting people and electing people that represent us. And although this panel just happens to be all African American, us is whoever you are, right? So us is the mental health community. Us is, whatever race that you identify. Us is whatever gender that you identify. Find people that represent you, your beliefs, your values, and vote them in and hold them accountable. And that goes for mental health and everything else.
Can I speak to that? I'm so glad you said that, especially about like us and not making it just a race thing. I think we need to view us as anybody that identifies with our plight, excuse me. that is us, because you have white allies that will go hard for you, like, and get it, not like not performative things, that will really get in the trenches with you and advocate for things. And so I think that's super important, that we don't label just us as, I mean, we're all Black here, as just Black people. Are really those advocates that will go in. There was another point I really wanted to make, but I'm sorry, it just flew out of my head, but it was so good and it flew out. If it comes back, because when I thought about it, I was like, that was good. If it comes back, I'll say it.
I'll touch on too, just what the situation we're dealing with now, being in the middle of a pandemic, and whether you are keeping it nonpartisan, but whatever party affiliation you identify with, the reality is that these past couple of years have been extremely difficult to deal with. And this isn't anything negative against Republicans, but unfortunately they've been in positions of power. And so with COVID and everything, it's exacerbated the mental illnesses that you may have already had. Or I know, me speaking candidly, I've definitely developed a lot more anxiety since this pandemic, which I'm sure most people already have as well. And so as it relates to voting, think about the administration that you think will get us out of this pandemic. Think about the on a local level, when we're talking about, and I always talk about the eviction moratoriums and resources and funding for small businesses and things of that nature, where people are unemployed. People are dealing with not having health insurance because they're unemployed. So how do you get the mental health services that you need? How do you get the medication that you need? How are you going to pay your bills? Think of all of those things when it comes to voting today. If you've already voted, then your vote's casted. But if you're still on the fence and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to vote, think about those things and think about where you want to be come 2021. And if we're still dealing with this pandemic, we're seeing cases rising every single day. How are we going to get out of this? Because we can't keep living like this for another year. None of us can. And so vote. If you haven't thought about voting, vote again.
Right.
Vote.
I remember what I was going to say. And Markia, we actually talked about this on another podcast for the Urban League, about purity tests for our political candidates. And so I know we are talking right now, and we have focused a lot on millennials and young folks. I think what we need on the other end, I appreciate the ask on our end for us to get involved by Tawana, and like that you're there to support. I think on the other side, the ask needs to be that we need to look or ask our older generation to kind of cancel this purity test idea. And what that essentially is I'm sorry?
Let's call it the seasoned generation.
Okay, seasoned, experienced. How about that? Experienced, yeah. Baked well done. This purity test, and essentially what that is almost looking for the perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. And we have to realize that no candidate is perfect, but I think a lot of that we let a lot of or we have in the past. I do see some movement away from that. We've ascribed a lot of these candidates past personal failures determine who they are today. Now there's room to debate what we should still bring over, and so I'm not saying completely eradicate what someone has done, but the overall idea of this purity test of like scrutinizing things that people did when they were 20 and now they're 30 and want to be involved and run, and whatever they did at 20, because keep in mind, we grew up in a social media generation. So we may have posted things that we would not post today. Even the generation behind us, they may be posting things today that in 5 to 10 years, they'll look back on it when Facebook tried them with those Facebook memories, like, oh no, let me delete that. That is not even who I am anymore. So I think we need to keep that in mind. That would be my ask for our seasoned, experienced generation on the other side. As we young people begin to step up, recognize and put into context some of our past behaviors and our past mistakes, and not so tightly hold that against us when we do decide we want to get into that.
You're absolutely correct in what you're saying. None of us in this other generation have room nor the right to deny your access to even attempting to, participate in a more involved or engaged leadership position because you might have been at Kappa Weekend in Galveston, Texas 10 years ago, right?
Hello.
Let me say
Not
this.
what I do now.
Some of us were there too at our time. There
Yeah.
just was not social media. There are tapes, however, in some boxes somewhere. But we cannot be foolish enough to ignore the wealth of resources, the wealth of energy, the wealth of passion that you just might bring to the table. You may come to my home for Thanksgiving dinner, and I may have a delicious turkey and all the other fixings, but I am not going to prepare yams or peas because I don't eat them, right? Now, does that mean that you're not going to come, although I'm bringing all this other love and we have the opportunity to engage? That's just not going to happen. I encourage you all, those viewing and those on the panel that are in this generation that has the ability to get more involved, when you have other people that are older that might shut you off or brush you off, go somewhere else. Go somewhere else. This is what I tell people, even women. We just came out of October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but I talk breast cancer year round. I tell women, if your doctor won't listen to you and they keep brushing you off, trying to say, oh, maybe you changed the laundry detergent, and you're saying, no, I got this on my breast. Oh, it's probably because of your deodorant. Sometimes we check. Listen, go somewhere else if they won't listen. There are some seasoned people, seasoned representatives and politicians that will spend time with you to hear you. And I will tell you, as a young woman getting involved, I ran into a lot of wait your time is not your time, right? But then there were some people that I forever respect, like State Representative Sophronia Thompson, State Representative Alma Allen. Those are two women that actually kept their word. When I said, I'd like to come and sit and speak with you, and they said, call me when you're ready, and I called them, they actually were prepared for me, and they took time with me, and they heard me, and I heard them. I was very saddened as I campaigned when I would run into millennials and have conversations like on the campus of Prairie View or in Austin as well. And you had millennials looking back at you saying, we don't feel like the older generation likes us. We don't feel like they hear us. That was one of the saddest things in the world for me, because that breakdown will have devastating effects on both ends of the spectrum. That type of division where you don't feel like we hear you, you got older people who feel like we're pushing them away, that they don't matter anymore. Their service is no longer needed, right? If you all don't feel a connection to me right now, when I'm 80 years old, you won't be, beating your chest saying, listen, we need to fight for our seniors, right? If you don't feel connected to me where I can have an opportunity to sit down and say, listen, if you go that way, you're going to hit your head on the wall. Go the other way, then you're going to run into a lot of unnecessary pains and stress that could have been avoided if we felt connected. So I'm really big about making sure that that connection takes place. Go somewhere else if they won't hear you. God puts passions inside of us that you just can't deny. You cannot sleep, and you have to do it. You have to do it. So when that passion is there, go where people will hear you, feed you, and fill you. I wanted to say, you said something, Markia, about the pandemic. I would like, and Jessica, you may be able to help with this. If we begin in the early 2021 to move out of this pandemic season, I would like for us as the National Alliance of Mental Illness as an organization to have prepared to have prepared for us coming out of the pandemic. When you think about our military men and women, you think about the Vietnam War, and you read the stories about the traumatic mental impact that was had upon those military people, personnel, from fighters on. When they came back, America was not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
When you know better, you do better. And I am telling you, when we come out of this pandemic season, unlike a military war, it was directly felt by the people. For instance, in Vietnam, it was directly felt by those soldiers, and it was directly felt by those soldiers' families. But with this pandemic, all of us have been in this pot as mental health experts, advocates, professionals. We need to come up with a plan for when everybody comes home. Everybody won't come home likely until 2021. That is my observation and how I feel. But there is going to be massive post-traumatic stress disorder on display. So the mental health professional community needs to get together now to prepare. And some of us are also going to be experiencing it, right? So whoever's stable right now, let's get together and start to prepare for what's going to happen, including representatives. Election day is today. So we need to go on now to reach out to representatives on the state level, on a county, local, and federal level to say, we need the mental health post-traumatic stress disorder preparations going now. When people wake up from the fact that they lost their loved ones, from the fact that they had to look on a FaceTime to say goodbye to their loved ones, it's gonna hit. When we sink in, I've lost 2 family members to COVID. I've lost 2 family members. We've not had time to properly grieve. The reality is we couldn't go to either of their funerals. When all of this comes down in 2021, we need to be prepared for it as much as possible. So that would be my plea, to the mental health community, to start to come up with a plan that would include engaging legislation and resources from our representatives and elected officials.
You're 100% correct. What the mental health professionals are often saying is that the next wave is going to be the mental health pandemic as a result of the trauma that is brought on by COVID. Both, like you mentioned, having to deal and process with the deaths involved, but also people have lost jobs.
Yeah.
People lost homes. People's living situations or lives are permanently changed by this pandemic, and they have no control over it. We've seen an increase in death by suicide. So there's definitely trauma, there's definitely anxiety, there's definitely depression, and a host of other mental health issues. Caregivers are being put in situations that are exasperating the difficulties that they've already experienced. There are a host of situations, and our hope is to be ready, to be prepared, to come together with other mental health organizations to be able to support the community as they're going through this. I know you and I were introduced by Reverend Allen in such an initiative. NAMI received a grant from Bay Good Foundation and Jack Dorsey to help communities in the greater Houston area that are most impacted by COVID-19. And that's in all of those ways, right? Not just one way, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally, financially, and any other way that we can support. So you definitely hit the nail on the head there. And we hope to come together with like-minded individuals like you all to get that done. So we are over 2, and I wish I could continue this conversation for another hour. You have all been so awesome. And Quentin, you were right. Once you remembered it, it was quite necessary and quite essential.
Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to recall your comment.
Right, come back. I'm gonna eat in a minute. That's why it flew away, because I got hungry.
think I'm gonna follow your lead, have a late lunch as well. So thank you all for joining us. Please, please, please go vote if you haven't already. If you have any questions, what is the voting website for questions, you guys? I know Hall YP is on it.
Yeah, you can go to, vote.org is one of the easiest places you can go to, whenweallvote.com. What else?
Harris Votes.
Harris Votes. Yeah.
And keep in mind that if you are in line at 7:00 p.m., you might be the 10,000th person in line, 100th person in line. If you are in line at 7:00, do not get out. You can vote. You might not get in the building until 8 or 9 or even midnight. We saw what happened during the March primaries, but as long as you are in line, don't let anyone make you believe that you have to step out. You just stay right there until you get inside to vote.
And again, please visit voteformentalhealth.org. That's the number 4 for more information about mental health legislation and about the candidates' views on mental health topics. You guys have a lot of fans in the Facebook comments. Everybody's loving what you were saying, and lots of support. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. For our audience, please join us next week for our Tuesday Talks at 1:00, same place. We will have Juanita Rasmus joining us with Bread of Life in St. John's downtown, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about her book, Learning to Be. So again, vote, vote, vote. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you to Hall YP for providing some of our many panelists, and for Judge Joe, and for you, Tawana. And again, I'm just oozing with gratitude. So I'll talk to you all again soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Bye.